fake to Swift. Williams throws wide open. Impressive, man. Look at the way that Bears just pounced on the Bears today. 20-0 in the first. Fourth down and 3. Williams stands in the pocket. That's a nice job. The first option was Keenan Allen. Squeeze her in as an extra blocker on third down. Williams. Expectations are so high. There's no way for them to meet the expectations to start the season. Number 45. Williams. Keenan Allen. We said, okay, we can't get any better than that. Sure enough, he turns right back around and he's saying, I'm going to beat a DJ Moore. Taylor Williams on fourth down. Going deep.
Hello and welcome, everybody. That is the good that you will see from last week's game, and that's about it. Figured I'd just start it off on the positive. Why not? Because the Bears went in there and just laid another egg. Not that it's not expected, but I mean, 20-0 at halftime. And I heard the Lions beat reporter on ESPN 1000 on my little drive before the show talking about how when the Lions went into the locker room at halftime, how Ben Johnson was chewing out some of the offense for their lack of execution in the game plan. He was pissed that they got 2 field goals on 2 drives, and he was pretty upset about their red zone percentage going into the half at 20-0. And so, you know, Caleb had a good game. Despite all odds, this kid keeps continuing to just drag this corpse, you know, through the rest of the season. And even though, like, you know, I voiced my opinion that I don't think it's worth having him out there, he did once again have a pretty good game. You know, 3 fumbles, though, 2 of them lost. Meanwhile, Detroit just happens to fake a fumble and just bite you. Dave, how you doing this week, man?
I'm good, dude. It's Christmas. You know, I'm not letting the Bears ruin my Christmas.
Isn't it crazy? It's set up to do so. There's literally a game right before, and we turn right back around on Thursday.
It almost
It
almost would have sucked, man, if we were, you know, kind of in a playoff race, and it would have been disappointing. It would have like ruined some feelings, but I mean, I'm okay. I'm ready for the next season. I'm sure you are too. Just kind of seeing. I think we're both in off-season mode almost.
Yeah, you know, I did want to shoot a topic your way that Courtney Cronin came out with some stats a couple days ago, and it got me so pissed off reading them that I found J2K to come on with me, and we sat there and just bullshit about it, right? But I just want to run these down for you real quick. So since the bye week, since week 7, the Bears defense, 32nd in total QBR allowed, 32nd in yards after the catch allowed, 32nd in yards per completion allowed, 31st in quarterback's time to throw from the pocket per pass, 31st in first downs allowed, 31st in yards per drive, 31st in drives that result in points, 30th in pass rush win rate. We're talking about a bottom 2 defense since week 7.
I want to be like I'm going to try to be realistic reacting to it, right? Matt Eberflus was never really the problem on defense, right? So he did a decent job with defense. Secondly, I think we've all known for a while this was never really going to be a good pass rush. And then the other part of that, I guess I'm just reacting to those stats on the fly, but I think my biggest thing with that is I saw a lot of like Tremaine Edmonds hate this weekend and just kind of hating on him because he didn't play very hard. There's such a difference of these players playing and competing in playoff games or games that would be relevant to the playoffs as this, which is, you know, we talked about it last week. It's like a self-preservation mode. It's we got to play the game. We got to make tackles. I get the devil's advocate side of that argument, which is, hey, like if you're not a tone setter on defense, then of course you're going to be losers. And so I get that part. I think if this team was like 8-4 and competing for a playoff spot or something, I think you'd see a lot more players that you might be like 50-50 on or a little bit more on the fence with playing harder. So
yeah, you know, you mentioned it during the offseason where you said defenses aren't consistent. Year to year, you can have the same group of guys and go from a top 10 defense to a middle of the pack defense pretty easily. But when it falls this far, right, it's more than just inconsistency. There's a lot of lack of effort out there. There's a lot of lack of talent. and a lack of effort. And it's a combination of that along with bad coaching and bad schemes and, some terrible close losses. These guys, I mean, I can't give them much reason to keep trying, right? So it just is what it is. But I thought it was very damning, and I think it really tells a story of the season because, 4-2, and here we go.
Here's the thing
9
too, is
straight
like I'm
losses.
watching the draft order at this point, right? We're in the tankathon season, and I'm watching these teams, and I'm looking at the top. Yeah, flex things.
Yeah, we're not about to talk about the Seahawks game here, man.
Yeah, we're not coming in here
it's
being
not
like,
where this
oh,
is
what are the
going.
positives to gain? No, it's all just, yeah. Daniel Jeffries with the last comment just nailed it on the head. It's just, let's just get this over with already. I forgot where I was going with this. It's more of a thing
Draft
of
order.
Yeah, draft order and tankathon. There's different types of teams and why they try hard or they play well. Like, look at the Panthers right now. They're playing hard and they're winning against like decent average teams. They just beat the Cardinals and they're doing well because they really don't have anything to gain from losing or being bad. It's the core is there, the young core is there. They're only going to get better. They can only practice. The coach just got hired, and there's a positive to be gained from playing hard. This is a team that, and I looked at that draft order right now. I think it was Giants, Patriots, Raiders, Titans, Jaguars. It's one of the worst draft orders that we've seen in a really long time because there's like a log jam at 4 wins. Last year, 4 wins got you the second overall pick. 4 wins was the Commanders, and they were second overall. So it's a log jam at the bottom right now. And the Bears, to me, are the worst team in terms of why the end of this season matters. It's all guys that on your team, the guys that you free agency acquired are guys that, like Tremaine Edmonds, I get it. He's been playing like shit. But that's a guy that, for one reason or the other, he's going to look at Buffalo and be like, I just left that situation to come here. What the fuck am I doing here? The other part of it is that he's been on good teams and he knows what it looks like. And he's like, why would I sacrifice my body? The Bears are just in the worst position where if this is a young team with a bunch of young players, they'd be playing hard, getting their reps, because the few players that are doing really, really well on the Bears is Caleb, Rome, some of the younger offensive linemen, I suppose, right? Or some of the younger defensive players like Kyler Gordon.
There's a third
Minus
part to
Cole
that.
Kmet, by the way.
There's a third part to that, though, too, David. And it's the fact that the defensive line is so bad that now you're putting more on the linebackers.
Yeah.
Right? So at some point, you just get sick of it. Right? I mean, you're getting gashed right up front. They're not doing you any favors either. So, man, it is what it is.
Yeah, and that's why I like the Bears right now. It is, like Daniel said, it is the 100% just let's get this season over with, because that's what the players and the coaches are thinking too. Because most of the coaches know that they won't be there. Most of the players know that either if I'm young, I'll be there. If I'm old, I'll probably either get scrapped, or depending on which coaching staff comes in, like I might not be here or I might get traded. So I understand it. It's just one of the worst. It's one of the worst situations in the NFL right now, just because I don't think that they're like beyond saving next year. I think going into next year, they're still one of the best looking rosters. It's just a waste of time to end this year.
It's crazy to me because that's the hard part. It's you have a lot of draft capital invested in that defense, a lot of young players, right? So you can't just pull the plug on some of these guys without it being, without it affecting you pretty badly. Like Tyreek Stevenson's a name. Tyreek Stevenson's on this team next year. Yeah. Situationally, you know what I mean? Because what are you going to do? You drafted the kid second round, still pretty early on. Like, I'm not saying maybe he'll get the same amount of play time that he's gotten this year, but he is on this roster next year. So you're kind of stuck with some of these guys, and it's crappy because you're also left in a state where you're wondering, like, okay, so how much of it is lack of effort versus lack of talent? At some point, it is hard to tell the difference between the two. So as a new coach comes in here and gets these guys to play at max effort, Is this team more talented than we think it is? I mean, I don't think this is a bottom 2 defense, David. But they are. You are what you are, right? So that's the tricky part right now in my mind is being left in this state of kind of confusion, like in this gray area where, I know we're sucking, but I don't know. I don't know what to do moving forward because if you go down that route, there's just too many holes to fill still.
Yes. Long answer, short answer, yes. Short answer to your long question. Yes. It is a problem with the coordinator. It's a problem with the players. Here's the thing I really need people to understand. And watching this, we talk to each other through text about that game. And the more we watch Bears games, the more we're thinking we need Vrabel. Because defense and a lot of football that I watched this weekend, because I have a lot of fantasy implications going on. I watched like almost every game this weekend. I noticed that the good teams have players that I cannot name on defense. We were talking about like Pittsburgh. They have a few notable names, but like teams like, Buffalo, Washington, Seattle, Tampa Bay, like playoff contending teams, Denver, I cannot name a majority of their defensive players. And the issue there is that we know these players really, really well because we are on the Bears and we watch the Bears and we think that they are better than they are. And it comes down to a coaching schematics type of issue and an effort type of issue. Defense is all effort. And we said this going into last year. Defense is so fickle because it just comes down to effort. And so I'm not really worried about this team going forward on defense because I think that there's tons of talent there. But is it just going to end up being the right scheme, the right thing? It is a bottom 2 defense right now, but I expect it to be. They just don't care, and I don't blame them. Like, this team is a dumpster fire right now. It is the worst. Like, I'm looking at the draft order right now. At least, the Giants. The Giants on defense have, like, some young pieces that really play hard and they play decent. They're going to be the first pick in the draft. Patriots, same thing. Young team, trying to work hard. I'd rather be the Bears than Jacksonville at this point. They have the 3rd overall pick. Tennessee, Cleveland, Las Vegas, Carolina, the Jets. There's a couple teams that are ahead of us in the draft that I'd still rather be the Bears than them. But the list gets shorter and shorter. And with the defense, like, I don't know, even a top 15 to top 10 defense next year still gets the job done. I'm not so worried about those stats. I'm just really not, because I think that right now and what we're watching against Detroit, like, I just knew that Caleb was going to get garbage time points because Detroit was going to score because they're actually trying to win. And then the Bears get to respond and then just do this little shootout thing. And I just don't worry about these stats right now. Everything right now, we said this at the beginning of the year because we didn't really expect much. Everything this year is about eye test. At this point, with we've been doing this since 3 weeks ago, 6 games left. Everything was eye test. And right now, everything is eye test. I mean, putting good things on film is what Keenan Allen said. We got to put good things on film. Keenan Allen sounds like he's auditioning for a new job. So I'm just not that worried. There's like only 2 games left, and at this point, I'm just watching for young players.
So with that being said, come draft time, what is your focus? I mean, obviously, you've poured a lot into the offense by drafting a quarterback at pick 1. You have a top 10 pick right tackle. You have a top 10 pick wide receiver. I mean, you got to get this line right, period. And it looks like the chatter is that they're not going to sign Tevin Jenkins, that they're most likely going to let him move on. But can you replace 4 out of 5 linemen and feel good about that going forward? I mean, if anything, you need to probably overpay him just for consistency's sake, in my opinion. Like, at this point, he's got leverage on you, and you're going to let him walk because you're going to be cheap. But he deserves to have that leverage.
So, and I have 2 questions for you because I feel like going into this week, we just didn't have much to talk about as a show. And we talked about this beforehand. It's just as an episode, like, I don't know what to talk about anymore because The Vrabel situation is very sensible and logical, but it's upper management that's the trump card in this whole coaching search. But I'm scared that the media will choose Ben Johnson to save the GM. Daniel, I think anybody who is fighting for Ryan Poles right now is fighting a losing uphill battle. I think Ryan Poles, that was kind of going to be my response to that, is right now, Ryan Poles has suffered the most out of these last 6 games to end the season, more than anyone in the Bears franchise and the Bears organization. There's nobody who has been like, you want to talk about like Tremaine Edmonds has had a bad few games, like Keenan Allen's looked bad, DJ Moore's looked bad. There's no one that looks worse right now in the last like 6 games than Ryan Poles. Ryan Poles, even mid-season, was still kind of like, meh, maybe he can be saved, maybe he can be salvageable. Ryan Poles in the last 6 weeks, his approval rating, if we're talking about pure approval rating, has probably gone from like 100 at the beginning of the year to like 50. He's down to like 10. I don't think anybody's really concerned about Ryan Poles. It's kind of staggering. I don't think he's that bad. I think he's still a middle of the pack GM, but fuck him. Like, honestly, I don't have any sympathy for him. Like, he's been doing a really bad job. So I'm glad it's kind of come to light. I really, really want to like find some clips of me shitting on him at the beginning of the year and just throw him back out there.
I have him. And, when you first said it, I was taken back a little bit because I've always been a Ryan Poles guy, right? And it's one of those things that over time you have convinced me on, because as much as I want to like him, all I really like is his draft approach. And even that, it's a results-based business. I like the approach, but the results are the results. And it hasn't worked out. Your third-round picks are terrible. Terrible, right? Like, you passed up Jalen Carter for Darnell Wright. I'm not sure if that was the right move. You drafted, a couple defensive backs. One of them, Tyreek Stevenson, has literally was the straw that broke the camel's back this year. But even before that Washington game, David, you pointed out, you're like, Tyreek Stevenson is not having a good year. 3-4 games in, you said this to me. And so it's not, even with last game, dropping that pick 6, like, come on, man. Like, you either do or you don't. You don't get to just keep getting chances.
I remember the first text that you sent me after we drafted Tyreek Stevenson, and I watched his highlight videos, and I was like, this guy's going to suck. His hips are terrible. He's a straight line, up and down cornerback. He has no change of direction, even in college, even in Florida. I remember watching his, like, college tapes, and I remember you asked me, like, what do you think of this draft pick? I thought he sucked.
He's a hard hitter. I'll give him credit there.
That's fine.
He's made some good run stops, and then his rookie year having those 4 interceptions kind of gave you some false hope.
Right. But I initially, when you asked me, like, what do I think of Tyree Stevenson getting drafted, I thought he sucked. I looked at his college game tape, and I was just like, this guy has no hip flexibility, no hip mobility. He can't change directions to save his life. And that's kind of what his detriment has been in the last few years in the NFL. Is like anytime they put him in the slot or put him on like an angle route and he has to change directions, he gets fucking absolutely annihilated.